China apparently is doing far more than keeping a very interested eye on tomorrow's important elections in Taiwan. In fact, they appear to be interfering in those elections. The regime spreading disinformation to stop the current president from being reelected. She rejects, quote, one country, two systems idea for Taiwan that is in effect in Hong Kong. It's going to be fascinating to see what does or does not happen in that election. She is, of course, the favorite in the election, expected to win re-election. Joining us to assess that and much more, Gordon Chang, columnist, author, senior fellow at the Gatestone Institute. Gordon, great to have you here.
Thanks, Lou.
The fact that China would engage in disinformation, an influence campaign in that election, and to do so baldly is somewhat surprising. Not their interference, but how obvious they are about doing so.
Yes, and the other thing that they've done, Lou, this has been in the works for a long time. They've been buying into Taiwan media, so they own it. And that means the disinformation campaign is really embedded into Taiwan politics. It's been going on for now years. And of course, it's stepped up in the days before the election, where there is all sorts of news that is absolutely untrue.
And that would be like allowing big tech and big telecom to buy into U.S. media. I mean, that would be silly of us to permit such a thing. Why would Taiwan let them do that?
Well, there is now a bill that was just passed in the last few days about interference in the election. But this
that's timely. It just seems a little close to the event.
Yeah, this was, of course, controversial because the media companies in Taiwan were against it because they were getting a lot of money from Beijing. But, you know, at the end of the day, I don't know if it's going to affect things so much because what occurred in Hong Kong has really propelled the president, Tsai Ing-wen, to not only get a renomination of her party, which she wasn't going to get, but also now giving her a 10 to 15% lead in the polls.
Very quickly, Hong Kong itself. So you do expect her to be reelected, irrespective of the interference of the PRC.
Yes.
Let's turn to Hong Kong. We have seen very little out of Hong Kong. Is that real calm, or is it sort of benign neglect on the part of international media of what is still unrest within Hong Kong?
Well, there were big protests at the end of December, beginning of this month. But what's really had, I think, an important effect is the Wuhan Pneumonia. This is that mystery outbreak in the center of China. It's gone into Hong Kong. It's jumped the border. You know, you see these images of guys in the biohazard suits.
This initially began with an isolation including very quickly the World Health Organization moved in. There were 44 cases. I mean, that's remarkably early for the WHO to be moving in. What's your understanding of the extent of the contagion?
Well, there are many unreported cases in China. There's also a number of cases in Hong Kong that haven't been reported. And we know that a similar pneumonia is starting to show up in South Korea. So what's happened in Hong Kong on the protests? People don't want to go out. So it has been quiet over the last week or so. But I think that this is really the fear over the contagion.
And if that's the case, I would suspect disinformation on the part of the Chinese government to achieve just that end, wouldn't you?
Yeah, of course. You know, they're very good at disinformation, not only in Taiwan.
Yeah, I would think that it had to be considered at least. Let's turn to phase one of the trade deal to be signed by the president and the vice premier next Wednesday, I believe. This is a big moment for both countries. And your sense of its weight, its impact, and its, let's say, assurance?
Well, first of all, you know, President Trump yesterday in that interview in Toledo talked about how it might not be January 15th. He's been talking about January 15th now for more than a week. And yesterday was the first hint that it might slip into a later period. So I suppose there's going to be a phase one trade deal. But on the other hand, the president is signaling some uncertainty as to timing. Well, that could very well be translation problems or all sorts of...
Sometimes we have to translate Larry Kudlow, but here he is, and we're going to do it without translation or interpretation. Well, we will do some interpretation. Here is the president's, one of them certainly, economic advisors.
Phase 1 will be signed on Wednesday in a lovely ceremony. We're going to have a dinner the night before and a lunch afterwards. President Trump will sign it with the vice premier. No one's ever done this before. We've never had a U.S. trade deal of anything like this. That's the hard part. You follow me? We've never done this. This is history.
History. Larry Kudlow certainly is not doubting Wednesday.
Yeah, certainly. But also Larry Kudlow is saying that there is going to be no text of the deal released until after the signing. That makes me a little bit suspicious. But yeah, this is history. There's no question about it. It is momentous. The markets think it's momentous. And, you know, I agree. We'll have to see what it looks like when they release the text.
You're excited?
I'm always excited.
I couldn't resist that, Gordon. Thanks very much. Gordon Chang, always great to have you here.